Language acquisition is a fascinating field of study, and researchers have conducted various experiments to understand how language develops in young children. One intriguing experiment that has been proposed is to leave 100 newborn babies on an island and observe which language they would speak, assuming they have no exposure to any language from birth. This thought experiment raises interesting questions about the role of nature versus nurture in language development. The hypothesis is that if newborn babies are isolated on an island without any contact with speakers of a specific language, they will naturally develop their own language. Some linguists and experts argue that language is an innate ability of the human brain, and in the absence of external input, children will create their own language system. However, there are several factors to consider in such an experiment. Firstly, language is not just a biological process, but it is also deeply influenced by the environment and culture. Language is learned through exposure and interaction with others who speak the language. Without any input from a specific language community, it is unlikely that the babies would spontaneously develop a fully formed language with complex grammar and vocabulary. Secondly, language is a social phenomenon. It serves as a means of communication and allows individuals to convey their thoughts, emotions, and ideas to others. In an isolated environment with only 100 babies, there may not be enough social interaction and communication needs to drive the development of a full-fledged language. Another important factor to consider is that newborn babies are not born with a blank slate. They already have a genetic predisposition to language and are born with certain language processing abilities. Research has shown that infants as young as a few months old are sensitive to the sounds and patterns of the language they are exposed to, which suggests that language learning begins even before birth. Therefore, it is unlikely that the babies on the island would start from scratch and create a completely new language without any linguistic influence. Considering these factors, it is more probable that the babies on the island would not develop a language on their own, but rather they would adapt to the language of their caregivers or the dominant language in their environment, assuming they receive some form of language input. If the island is an English-speaking community, it is likely that the babies would eventually start to exhibit language development patterns consistent with English, such as acquiring English phonemes, vocabulary, and grammar. In conclusion, while the idea of 100 newborn babies creating their own language on an isolated island is intriguing, it is unlikely to happen in reality. Language development is a complex process influenced by various factors, including genetics, environment, and social interaction. Without proper language input and exposure to a specific language community, the babies would likely adopt the language spoken by their caregivers or the dominant language in their environment.